Hello, everyone. Tonight I am with author Kristin Martin, and we are going to be talking about her book, Bound by Oath, which is book 2 in Vampires of Las Vegas. And it's a series of 3 interconnected standalones. So, word of mouth, you can read each one by itself, but it's always better to go from 1 to 3. And tonight we will start with book 2 because that is the most recent release. And time permitting, we are going to ask some broad questions for book 1 to get people in the mood to read both books in anticipation for book 3 to come out to be determined. So the first question I have for you, Kristin, is this is a vampire book. How kind of nerve-wracking is it to break into the vampire world of romance?
For me, it's not nerve-wracking at all. Like, I have been obsessed with vampires for my entire life, okay? When I was like 13, my mom introduced me to The Lost Boys, which is like a classic vampire movie. Um, and ever since then, it has been my obsession. I've collected like a bunch of vampire books and encyclopedias and all these things. So it really wasn't nerve-wracking for me. I've always kind of grown up writing vampire short stories as a younger person. And I was actually really excited to finally, as an adult, like write a real vampire romance. Because I feel like a lot of times when I'm trying to like go through Kindle or find a book that's like a vampire related book, I don't find as many as regular romance that's out there. So I was excited to finally like have a vampire trilogy, just completely vampire romance. It's only vampires and humans. Like, we don't do other supernatural creatures and beings and all these things. So it wasn't nerve-wracking at all. I still am. Like, it's my niche, it's my thing. That's why I decided to go with paranormal romance author, because I'm not going to do anything really other than vampires.
How would you describe your vampires to someone who might be newer to like a vampire style romance or even paranormal romance?
Yeah, so I compare my vampires to Dracula style. So there's always like the myths that surround vampires, like we don't like sunlight, we don't like crosses. I keep those things in versus like some of the mainstream vampire romances like Twilight and all those things, like they're very modernized and different in that way. I try to keep my vampires like you would see in the movies. I want them to be more like gothic and dark. I don't want pretty boy vampires, I guess you can say. Like, I want them to look dark and menacing, but like be able to draw you in with their eyes.
What's your favorite aspect of writing vampires into a romance?
And my favorite aspect, I think it's the biting. Oh, like, I love vampire bites. I think it's the hottest thing. It's my favorite thing to like read or see in a movie. And so bringing that to life in my romances has been so much fun. Because I make them in all 3 of these books that I've written, I make them a more sensual, sexual thing, biting. Even when like the bad guy or whatever is involved and he's doing the biting, it's still hot and it still like gets them excited. So I like that aspect of it.
For Bound by Oath,
Yeah.
this book is focused on Charlie. How different was her end story than what you kind of went into this story thinking her story might have been? Did it change at all, or did it pretty much stay how you pictured it going into the book?
It kind of pretty much stayed about what I expected. So I let my characters write themselves every time. I typically know how I want to start my book. I know how I want it to end. And so it's just about getting from the beginning to the end. And so every time I write them, they write themselves. I don't really have a huge plan. I draft chapters like very basic. I'm just like, okay, I kind of want this to happen in this chapter. And so I kind of just work around that. But I really ended up liking Charlie so much more than I thought that I would. Um, and so yeah, she kind of became more of a badass than I expected. I thought she might be a little more submissive or scared, but no, I totally turned her into a badass, and I love that about her.
So, what is different to you writing a female vampire versus the male vampires?
It's almost kind of easier because I'm a woman, and so like I'm like, well, what would I would like? It's easier to write in a female perspective for me, and I love female vampires too. So it hasn't been difficult. It's harder to because with the male vampires, I feel like they're just automatically hot. Like it's just automatic. And so I feel like the females, I really have to build them up. And so that part has been like hard, being descriptive with how they look and making sure that the smallest things, like I want their eyes colored to look good with like their hair and like how they present themselves. It's kind of crazy, but it hasn't been too hard. I think they're equally difficult to write. Um, Definitely females are easier to write than men, so that part was easy.
With Charlie's love interest, did
Yeah, Alex.
you always know it was gonna be who it was?
Mm-hmm.
And why did you pick the guy it ends up being?
Yeah.
The
So
guy it is.
Yeah, so when I was writing Bound by Shadows, I had come up with these three main characters, which was Adrian, Alexander, and Reina. They kind of came to me very fast in the drafting process, and I knew there was just a moment when I was like, you know what? I have these three characters. I really like these three characters. I'm going to write a book for each one. And so I knew going into book two that it was going to be Alexander, the main male character, his book, but I wanted it to be a female leading the book. So,
Mhm.
um, they those characters have been with me from the beginning, and I just knew that I was going to keep them each book. And so, even like as each book goes, like I try to keep all the characters together still to have cameos and things of each of them in each book.
So I've asked this for Charlie if her story changed, but was there anything with Alexander's character that shocked you while you were writing this book?
Yeah, he kind of became like the teddy bear, like the sappy guy that you go to cry on his shoulder kind of guy. Like I imagined him being this like ruggedly, because he's a fighter, like he likes to fight. And so like I imagine him being like this rugged, macho guy that takes no bullshit. And I feel like he ended up like seeing Charlie and just falling in love, and suddenly he's this puppy dog eye guy who can't get enough, and I really love that about him actually. And it's funny to me because I made all the other characters kind of like roll their eyes at their relationship because it's kind of gross, like they're always kissing or whatever. And so, yeah, that he was definitely not what I imagined in the beginning, for sure.
It's funny you mentioned about the characters rolling their eyes because my next question was the vampire friendship between the three that you've kind of based this series off of in each book that we'll see a main character in. I loved seeing how their responses were to him because when you see book one, you don't see him having the exact same responses. He's more like, I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of don't, but I
Yeah,
don't really care.
like doesn't care at all. Yeah, for sure.
Um, and to me, it was just hilarious watching these, old ass vampires just act like 19-year-olds going, oh my
Uh
God,
huh.
hooties.
Yes, I love that, especially with in book one, Adrian, the main character. Like he after I wrote book three, I was like, oh my gosh, this is Daddy Adrian. Because in each book he's just like, this is gross. Stop kissing. You guys are gonna kill me. This is gross. And so I love that. I love making them seem so immature in that way, but it's kind of cute.
And as far as Adrian goes, I did have a question for Adrian, and I want to be sure I don't spoil it. So let me pull up my note. Yes, so Adrian is book one. I found it funny, and you worded it as Daddy Adrian. How much karma will he get on his reactions to not only Alexander, but the character we're going to see come into book three as far as the PDA and him taking on that kind of almost paternal role, but also, not more of like maybe an older brother that believes he is the parent? Because we really see him step into that annoyed older sibling parent type role with Alexander and him being like,
Yeah.
can you guys like stop?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, how is the karma going to come back to bite him he gets his story, so we see him fall first.
Yeah. Hmm.
and
Yeah.
with his paired. So I'm curious, like, if we're gonna continue to see that aspect of him going in book 3.
Yeah, I'll tell you that in book 3, I wrote there's got to be 3, maybe 4 scenes where he walks in on them together and gets annoyed and angry, and not angry, but just like annoyed that he's like, you guys are gonna give me I think I wrote that, like, you guys are gonna give me a heart attack because he I have multiple scenes because I think it's hilarious having him walk in. There's a few times he walks in and overhears something that was meant for like girl ears only, and so that is just hilarious. It does follow him, and the karma is real.
For Charlie and Alexander, did you have any moments that you just really adored writing between them in this book?
Between like Charlie and Alex, or
Yes.
oh man, I it's hard. There's a lot of scenes that I wrote that I really liked between them. I think one of the biggest ones that stand out without giving like too much away was towards the end. You know, Alexander gets taken by this group of vampire hunters, and he's being tortured, and Charlie's a part of that. She's witnessing it, and there's a time towards the end when they're about to finally break free together, and I don't know, I loved seeing them kind of just grow together and break out of their cell. It's so hard to explain without giving too much away, but they've had so many scenes together that I feel they grew together so much, and I can't even pick a scene. It's so hard. I love them. So I think book 2 is my favorite. Alexander and Charlie are my favorite characters that I've written. And just yeah, it's I think just that end scene when they're finally breaking free, they're fighting back against um, the Oliver and everybody that's trying to kill them. Just the words that they exchange. I wish I could say it, but like I don't want to give it away. That really was like a turning point for me where I thought they were just really good for each other.
Were there any scenes that made you kind of laugh out loud while you were writing? Like, oh my God, my readers are either going to really love this or they're going to hate me forever by having this part in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I have that happen all the time. Um, and I feel so like weird, not weird. Like I need Jesus or something sometimes because I swear like I start laughing by myself in my room like a crazy person when I write a scene. And so actually I usually reach out to my best friend Katie Lee, who's also an author. I always text her like the scenes that I'm writing and I'm like, get a load of this because I need to share it with somebody. Like I can't keep it to myself. So I mean that happens all the time, and I can't even like give you a specific scene when actually yes I could. My favorite part actually in Bound by Oath was towards the beginning when they're first meeting. Alexander and Charlie are kind of first meeting as a vampire hunter and a vampire, and Charlie throws her favorite dagger in his butt, throws it at him, and it lodges in his ass, and he uses like the word derriere because he's old, right? And I I was laughing, and my developmental editor was actually helping me to write that scene, and we were cracking up. She was like, "Should we keep it in the book?" And I was like, "Yes, we have to keep that because it is hilarious." And then he keeps the dagger, and it follows him through the end of the book, and I that was hilarious to me.
And everyone's probably like, oh my God, this was the beginning of the end for you, buddy. Walking
That's where
around
he
with
fell in
a dagger.
love. Her dagger. That's what made me fall.
We're not going to associate with him anymore. Let's turn away and walk away quietly.
I loved that part. It cracked me up.
I
I didn't even expect that was another scene that kind of just wrote itself. Like I said, my developmental editor helped me with it, and um, I hadn't planned that scene at all, and it just happened, and it was beautiful.
Are we going to see more of the vampire hunters in book 3?
So no, not really. Little spoiler, but it's okay. Oliver from book 2 is in book 3, but not as a vampire hunter. We're not really gonna see them. I thought about keeping them because I do really like the hunter aspect of things. I think that's a fun vampire thing, but we don't really see the hunters too much. Charlie does do some fighting in book 3. They're all going to be kind of fighting together as a clan, and so she's going to instill some of like her skills as a hunter, but we're not really going to see the hunter order or anything.
Would that ever be something you wanna dive into in, like, a new series, like, really going into what is a hunter and, like, how did they, come to be?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I really love like Dracula and like the Van Helsing type of thing. And so I do really like the hunter aspect, and I do think there'll be some books in the future focusing on a main character being a hunter, and kind of deep diving into how that came to be. I am kind of like working on a new series already, and it's vampires, obviously, and there's going to be some vampire hunters in that, just a single hunter, and it's actually going to be a priest. So I'm trying to really scale it dark, like back to like I'm trying to make it more dark, more gothic, and so it's going to be a duet, and so we're going to see more of the vampire hunter in the second book, but it is going to be kind of the main theme of the books.
For the Las Vegas vampires, when you
Hmm.
sat down to write this series, what made you put it in Las Vegas? And how did you build that world that you wanted to build with like gothic and vampires and like this
Hmm.
sense of kind of like a dark sensuality between the couples,
Yeah.
but expand it to where you also have the option, like if you decide you're gonna, keep the same world but just place it differently.
Yeah. Vegas. I really liked Vegas because of the party scene, the sin scene, how weird people walk down the street every day and nobody bats an eye. And so I was like, I think vampires would fit really well here because nobody would care, it's just Vegas. So I really wanted to build on the city of lights and how so much craziness happens on for fun fact, never been to Vegas also. Never been. But I just felt like that was an easy place to write because there's always so much going on. Um,
Your world building. And
yeah.
what made you choose, like, Las Vegas?
Yeah, so Vegas, I've never been, right? I've never been to Vegas in my life, and I was really attracted to the City of Lights, the City of Sin. I feel like anytime I've seen anything about Vegas and the research that I've done, you could walk down the street and somebody could be half naked on stilts and it's like normal. Nobody bats an eye. So I figured this would be a good playground for vampires to kind of grow and kind of show themselves because they can essentially be themselves without people really caring or batting an eye or thinking otherwise. So I really liked Vegas for this series.
I enjoyed the spin on Vegas
Yeah.
because Vegas is like you said, like, what is someone no one's gonna notice this
Yeah.
weird non-human person walking next to them on the street until someone throws a steak at them. But even then, would citizens of Vegas be concerned?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe in this modern time a little bit, but maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe they think it's some type of parody play.
Yeah, right? Like people are just doing some people mind their own business, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know, I love Vegas for definitely for me. I think I'm probably attracted to Vegas because I know like a lot of vampire stuff is set in like New Orleans and things like that. And so I was like, I'm gonna this is what I'm gonna do.
So, with this book,
Yeah.
you've mentioned previously in this episode, Alexander is a fighter. How was meshing old style, old school vampire with underground, like rough and dirty Las Vegas fighting?
Yeah, I think it was easy. I loved having the aspect of, a vampire can still use all his um what are they like abilities, there we go. They're still able to use all their abilities, but they're still fighting with their fists, and so that was actually really easy for me to kind of get into, and I loved having him be my fighter. I love fighting, and so I wanted that to be a big thing in the book, and especially for him I wanted him to be a fighter so that when Charlie came in as a vampire hunter, they can kind of you can compare their fighting abilities. Like we have a vampire who is rough and can fight with his fists and his vampire abilities, but then you have Charlie who can use weapons and daggers and hunter type weapons, and so I think that was a lot of fun. for sure.
Were there any fight scenes between them that you just cackled or like gave yourself a pat on the back while writing these two in this book?
I don't know that I like really laughed too much at their fighting. It was more intensity. Like I was more in the moment with them. I feel like a lot of my fight scenes are intense. I try to make them like a typical like people would be fighting on the street. Like I don't want it to just be a funny moment. I kind of wanted it to be a where the lights dim and like the suspenseful music grows. Like that's what I was kind of envisioning when I do fight scenes. So I wasn't really like laughing at them very much. Just some of the small scenes where Charlie is goading Alexander or annoying him or whatever. But most of my fight scenes, I was definitely dialed in and in the moment with it.
Have a couple questions for book one. So,
Mhm.
book one is Adrian,
Yeah.
and he is the de facto protector and kind of almost like pseudo guardian of these unruly elderly vampires.
Yes, he's the master of them all.
How different now that you've had two books was, writing a old vampire, but in a sense, he is an old vampire
Yeah, like
and
old.
like in a different era old. So, I was just curious, like how different was it for you to kind of go into that headspace of, real old versus just maybe a tiny bit old?
Yeah, it is hard because there's times when I feel like I start writing some of the newer vampires that like Alexander or whatever. I feel like I start writing him with an older language or like how somebody would talk at an old time and I'm like, "No, that's more Adrian. Like I need to keep that with Adrian's voice." Even then, like when I was writing Adrian, he's very old and it was hard to to make him sound old but yet still with the times. It's weird how he so easily fit into the Daddy Adrian vibe. Like, I didn't set out to make him that way at all. And he just was like, he is the leader. Like, you go to him for everything, and he will make sure you're safe, and he'll take care of you. And um, I, I never like set out to make him so dominant in that way, but it just worked out really well. And he's continued through each book to be that guy.
And of course, in book one, his match is Arya, and he is not prepared for what she brings to the table with him.
Yeah, she's a young Spitfire for sure.
He's very much kind of still when we meet him in the protective. I don't want to say like women should be more demure, but he is very much in the mindset that like girls don't do this.
Yeah, should be submissive. Like, you're a new vampire. You're under me. Why are you talking back? Kind of.
Some of those scenes were just like I was sitting there, I was like, "Oh, this is hilarious." Like he doesn't know what to do with this young woman who's just like essentially, yes, a child to him. But at the same time, he is so unprepared for, modern times as well. She knows they both know different things, which
Yeah.
kind of eye-opened to how they kind of, work as a couple.
Hmm.
And of course, she stands up to him.
Right. It is hard because they are both on different levels, trying to be on the same level, but they just not. And so that was actually really fun to write. That Adrian is an old vampire set in his ways. Like he survived this long. I think you should trust him in knowing that he'll lead you in the right direction. Whereas Arya is like, screw you. Like, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to, you know, when I wrote in Bound by Shadows, there's a scene when she goes drinking pretty early on as a new vampire. And then she comes back and she's heavily drunk and she tries to take a swing at Adrian. And that actually did make me laugh when I wrote it because I was like, here is this little girl thinking she could stand up to this man with her hands, her little tiny fists, and that was really fun to write it, especially because Adrian, he could have killed her, but he didn't. He kept his cool and tried to get on her level.
And he's just sitting there going, "Oh my God, cute eye roll." Like,
Yeah.
internal sigh.
Yes.
And he's like, "Do I really wanna go through all this again?"
Yes. Uh-huh. But he did.
And now he has to go through one more with book 3 with his last minion and
Yes, with
all the
Reyna.
chaos they're gonna give him again.
Yeah, so I finally finished writing book 3, and it comes out May 19th. And I am so excited to finally be done. It is a male, male, female. So we're gonna see Reyna. So she was in book 1 and a little bit in book 2. She was like the best friend of Arya. And so this is her book, and she's gonna have 2 dudes because why not?
Oh, and you said there's scenes in book 3 with Adrian walking in. Poor man.
Yeah.
But
There's a
everyone's
lot.
gonna be laughing. All the other vampires in this den are gonna be like, "Oh, where's the popcorn, guys? Let's pull up a chair and laugh."
I loved writing those scenes. Like the first time I had him walk in, there wasn't anything like sexual happening. It was just a conversation between Arya and Reyna. And she ended up saying something out loud that was like really dirty or whatever. And Adrian just happens to be standing in the doorway. And he's just like stunned, like, well then. And then he just turns and walks away. And so I have moments like that a lot where he's just gonna walk in and be like, for God's sakes, like, why am I here? Is this karma for every time that I was getting it on with Arya? Yeah, so I'm excited.
When you picture these characters, how do you, like, picture them in your head kind of all together and, like, kind of living in this, like, found family type dynamic?
I don't even know how I picture that. Every time I picture them, like I start thinking of like characters in movies and stuff that I'm like, oh, you would look good in this role. And I picture them as a big family. Think about Full House like that. I picture them all together like that, you know, bickering and doing things together. Like I want them to be have a family unit. And so yeah, I it's hard to actually picture them in real life, but I want them to be a big family unit. I want that's what kind of really did picture Full House and like the Brady Bunch and all these old shows where you just have this family together and you argue and I don't know. That's definitely what I pictured.
With book 3, have we already met Reyna's counterparts?
You briefly, sort of, in book 2, one of the men, Liam, gets talked about. You don't see him physically. Actually, you do see him at the very end. I think it's in my epilogue. But you don't see him in the book. You hear about him because Reyna has this boyfriend. I think I even put it in Bound by Chalice. She has a boyfriend, and she's not there all the time because she's hanging out with this boyfriend. It ends up being Liam, who is a card dealer on the strip. And so I really liked Liam. So you do see him a little bit at the end of Bound by Oath. You can kind of picture him, but he wasn't in the other. And then the other guy, Nick or Nicholas, he is in Bound by Oath. And I don't think I used to. I get these names so mixed up all the time. I literally have to write their names down so I don't forget. He is in Bound by Oath. You see him at the end. He's kind of a it's kind of a big scene, so I won't go into too much detail, but yeah, he's kind of a big player.
I want to ask this, it might give stuff away, but for Reyna, are we gonna expect, since it is MMF,
Mhm.
more heat and more spice to her story?
Yeah, yeah. It I think, you know, my first chapter, there's some spice in there. It does have a lot. It's not a slow burn. It wasn't my intention to make it a slow burn. There is definitely a lot more spice. I had a lot of fun writing male scenes, and so I almost worry that the readers are going to think it's too much or like there's too much spice because I feel like sometimes I can't even find a happy medium. Like it's either not enough or there's too much. And so I hope that it seems organic and like these scenes seem like, you know, I didn't just put it there to like put it there, you know what I mean? But it is a lot spicier, definitely. And Reyna is a little dominant, if I shall say.
It'll be nice to see more of that aspect though, because Alexander and Adrian, even though they're not both super dominant in their, well, I mean, Adrian's dominant in all aspects and everything. But Alexander, even though he's more of a marshmallow, like when
Yeah.
you start to see him fall, he still does have very
Yes.
much a side to him that is, you are underneath me.
Yes.
Listen.
Yes.
It doesn't come out quite as much or quite as fiercely, but there's definitely times when he's like, no,
Yeah.
back up.
Yes.
And so it'll be nice to see this third, the only female in the trio, and how she, what does she bring to bat? And how did this female vampire survive this long with these two dudes who you think might have steamrolled her, but I'm thinking
No, I
we're
think
gonna
one of the
find out
guys gets steamrolled more than she does.
she's the ringmaster cracking the whip.
Yeah. I mean, Reina's definitely gonna have some dominant vibes with the men, but they're gonna be on their knees for her. They're gonna be worshiping her, making her beg, and I'm so excited for people to read it because I hope they like it. I just hope it's not too much. Like, I'll tell you, like as a writer, I actually struggle with spice. I struggle with writing spicy scenes. It's not my thing. Like I do better with writing plot or with descriptive. Like my descriptive writing is over the top sometimes, says my editor, who deletes like 3 to 5,000 words out of my manuscript. I do go over the top with it sometimes, but the spice has always been hard for me. My editors help me a little bit. I'm like, hey, how does this sound? Does this sound stupid? Does this sound realistic? So, yeah.
As far as the series as a whole,
Mhm.
when we get Raina's book, are we going to be satisfied with the journey all three of these relationships are taking place, or are you going to leave things open to potentially see new characters in different series?
I'm not leaving it open. I am definitely closing the door. But I hope that people are happy with the ending. And I hope that readers don't have a lot of questions at the end. I would potentially in the future like to write a few like um short stories, not full like novels, excuse me, for each of the two character for each of the characters of each book. So I would like to go back and do like an Adrian and Arya short story, just kind of see where they're at, and do that with each character. I think that would be a lot of fun. But as far as the series, I definitely close it out at the end. And so it was kind of bittersweet saying goodbye.
But for your writing as a whole, you mentioned at the beginning some of the favorite aspects and parts that you love to include in your vampires are, really the old lore and the old legends of, wooden stakes, garlic, not being out in the sun.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite and like most interesting lore to kind of dive in and wrap around these characters?
It has been, it's hard because I feel like each book is different, but mainly thinking about like the last book I wrote because it's so fresh on my mind is Sunlight. I was really excited to kind of dive into the sunlight aspect of things because in book three, I do have a bit of a sensitive scene at the very beginning. It's my prologue, and it's essentially a suicide scene of a vampire, with sunlight. And so I I was so excited to kind of like, what would that look like? What would that feel like? Because you see it in movies and stuff, but like, how do you actually verbally describe this kind of thing? So the sunlight was a lot of fun, and I love all the ways that you can kill a vampire. Like, I love all the lore. So it's been kind of fun just diving into each one of those, cutting off the head or stake through the heart. Like, and what do they look like when that happens? Like, I couldn't decide. I was like, should they burst into ashes? Should they just shrivel up? That was fun. That was fun to like dive into.
You also mentioned at the beginning, so you always knew these three
Yeah.
backbone characters, Adrian and Alexander and Reina. Were their names always cemented in your head, or how did you kind of come up with their names? Because their names sound more, old school, like old money, regal. They give you a sense of like generational, long-lasting names.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking for when I first started writing Bound by Shadows, I started with Adrian and kind of worked my way with him and um Arya, I've always liked that name. And so I have like a list of like character names that I write down. I'm like, oh, maybe I can use that one day. So that was on it. And so I pulled her. And then I was like, I don't remember what happened, but I already had the three characters. I had Adrian, Arya, and Alexander, and I was like, oh my god, everybody's name starts with an A. I did not mean to do that. I was like, oh my god, somebody is going to point out that I don't know how any other letter of the alphabet. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need a different letter for somebody else. That's how I came up with Freyna. I just had uh, a lot of times, like, if I can't find a name, I go on Facebook. I go on Facebook, I start searching names, and I'm like, what's a good name? Like, what sounds good? And that's how I found it.
The names are one of my favorite things in a book. And I hate to be that reader who says like sometimes if I pick up a book and I can't pronounce the name that I don't pick it up. But
Yeah.
sometimes there's names in like and fantasy that's different. I don't mind if I'm struggling and 500 like throughout the whole series that are like 500 pages each book and I'm just like how do I say this name?
Yeah.
Because it's fantasy.
Yes.
But sometimes in contemporary romance if I can't say the name I'm like I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it unless I listen to the book, like, in audio first, so I know how it sound. And the authors that I read for, they always know when I don't listen to the audio in those cases because they're like, "You're not spelling the name right." And I'm like, "I don't know."
Sorry.
I've listened to it before I've read it in print, and they're just, "Do you mean him?" And I'm like, "I think so."
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I was worried about that with Charlie's name because it's different. It's some people say Charlie, when they say it, and I'm like, no, it's Charlie. I just made it modern, I guess. But I always knew I wanted that to be her name, but I didn't want it to be spelled the regular way, So I had to make it like spice, like fancy.
You gave her the option for, like, when someone's trying to sass her, they can be like, "Charley."
That is true. I love that.
I mean, I was always that kid who when people had like, Nathaniel, but they would be called Nate, I'd be like, "No, you're gonna be Nathaniel."
Yeah.
Chris, but they're Christopher. I'm like, "No, no, you're gonna
I
be
love full names.
Christopher when I call you Nate. Like when I call you
Yeah.
by name, I'm not gonna be calling you Chris."
I love full names.
Yeah.
That's why, like, for each character, like Alexander, I have him as Alexander, each chapter. With book 3, we have Nicholas. I have Nicholas. I also don't like to shortcut the name unless, like, it's dialogue or something, but I like to keep the full names.
I do like Nick in certain cases, but in most cases I do like or I like it if if the secondary characters call them the nickname, but the main person in the bond is always calling them like Nicholas or like full naming them
Yeah.
or like first full naming them. I'll
Yes.
make that a thing. First
Yeah.
full naming them.
Yeah.
It says something different
Yeah.
that
The
they're
tone is different.
taking the time to, pronounce their whole name.
Yeah.
And that it's not like a ridiculously long, unable to pronounce name that I'm just like, help.
Can't do it. Can't do it.
For you, you said you've already started another series that's a work in progress. Are we going to expect it to be set in a new city and
Hmm.
within that same time period, or are we going back in time?
It is going to be modern. This time frame, like a modern time frame. The scene is different. I haven't changed anything yet, but so far I'm going with Arizona because I don't know, I couldn't think of anything else. It could change, but I'm very early in the first book. It's going to be a duet. So, yeah, I want the only thing I want different in this case with these characters is the vampires are definitely going to be older, not modernized. They're going to be able to turn into a bat.
So
They
you're
can't.
going old school.
Yes, it's going to be like bats, no sunlight. Mirrors are okay. That's about the only thing I made okay was a mirror because the modern mirrors are not like they're not going to be backed with silver like the ones back in the day, which is what they can't look into because of the silver. So yeah, I want it to definitely be Dracula-esque. I want it to be gothic. And it is going to be kind of like the first book. The title is actually going to be The Venom in Her Veins. And it's going to be like obsessive. He's going to be obsessed with her. She's going to be having visions and dreams of this vampire stalking her. And so I'm really trying to make it like darker in that way. I'm excited about it.
And you said this is the one we're gonna see the priest that's a
Yeah.
vampire.
Yeah. So this isn't like giving too much away, so I don't mind saying it. But the female main character is going to be working in a morgue, helping do autopsies and stuff. And a vampire is going to show up on her slab who had been burned at dawn on a cross. And so she's going to think she's going crazy, all these things like can't be a vampire. Well, the vampire's tooth cuts her finger when she's trying to look at him or whatever. And it's going to start a huge change. Oh my god. Change in her. Things are going to start changing in her. and she's gonna be connected to this vampire, and so he's gonna kind of be chasing her, trying to find her, stalking her, and using other people under his vampire influence to also stalk her. So, yeah.
Sounds like exciting things are in the works.
Yes.
I have 3 more questions, and they're kind of more rapid fire. So as an author, like, deciding how you're gonna write your books between, first, second, or third person,
Mhm.
what was, like, your deciding factor when you sat down to start writing what point of view you're gonna write in?
I've always written in first. It's just what comes natural. I think for a lot of writers that comes natural. I personally don't like reading books in third person. Second person's okay sometimes, but third person, I feel like every time I start a book that has great reviews and then it hits third person, I'm like, I don't know. I always like first person. It feels more real to me. It's easier for me to like fantasize in my head about what I want to write because I totally think when I'm showering, sleeping, whatever, like I'm thinking about what I want to write. I'm thinking about my chapters. And so I fantasize in my head like and then I write as if I were saying it. That's how I try to write. Anyway, it's easy.
An author, what do you read in your spare time? Are you reading similar books to what you write, or do you kind of go the 180 and read completely, on the other end?
So yeah, my favorite thing to read is 𝔸𝒉𝒂𝒎𝒑𝒊𝒂𝒏. I love anything in the 𝔸𝒸𝒂𝒑𝒏. Like that is my go-to when I need something to read. That is what I search for. That and like mafia romance. Those are like my favorite reads. So I don't really read a lot of vampire romance. To be honest, like I get nervous when I'm writing vampire books to read. I don't like to read them because I feel like I'm going to take aspects of somebody else's work into my own. And so I don't want to do that. Like I don't want somebody else's vampires in my head because I don't want to use what they're, you know what I mean? So yeah, my typical go-to is just 𝔸𝒸𝒂𝒏 or Mafia or even like dark college romance with a secret society. That's my go-to.
My last question is, now that you're kind of wrapping up this first series, are there any books that might have, come out while you were writing or set to come out soon that you're excited to finally get to read yourself?
Well, let me grab my Kindle. I'm just kidding. There's a lot of books coming out, I'm sure. I can't even think of all the names. I'm excited to just catch up on my TBR, like catch up on some books that I've downloaded. I know I signed up for some ARCs and I'm beta reading some of my friends' stuff. So that's really keeping me busy. I don't have anything specific that I'm excited about, but I'm excited. I have a huge stack of physical books that I need to read. I'm just excited to read, to pleasure read. Because writing, it's very stressful sometimes. Like I feel like I have so many deadlines and so many things I have to do that I'm just constantly writing and I can't really pleasure read.
Well, I enjoyed having you on tonight and getting to chat about the Las Vegas vampires and some exciting things you have in the works. And thank you for joining me. Thank you to anyone who tunes in to watch this when it drops.